So basically, before I begin, so basically, I'll just give you guys a heads up on how the webinar is going to look like. So basically, I'll start with some, I would say, big picture overview of what game development is, just to, I guess, bring everyone up to speed on what game development is and what it looks like. Now, this might be like old news for you, which is fine. I'm just trying to bring like a holistic big picture so everyone is aware of what's out there, and then we'll get into more practical details, I guess. So I'll share my screen. I think that's, this should work. 1 sec. All right. Do you see my screen? Do you see the slides? All right. All right. So game development, a big picture. What is game development? So when you guys hear about game development, what pops into your mind, right? Like, do you think, oh, it's just like making levels or scripting stuff or making mechanics, or is it more of creating tools, or is it making audio? Because games are a very, like, game development is a very multifaceted, big industry, and includes a whole lot of things. And when we say game development, that usually means a whole ton of stuff, because part of game development is the people. So I'll go to the next slide. So those are basically the technical jobs in the video game industry. You have some people who are game designers, right? They are the ones that design your game in all sorts of ways. There are the people that are animators that you might be familiar with, the people who make animations, the people who make models, the people who work on 3D, on bringing 3D animations to life. Then there are, even, like, you might not have heard of this, but there are audio engineers. Those are also, in a sense, game developers. There are audio designers and there are audio programmers, people who work on creating tools and software that allows audio to work so well in video games. Then you have software developers and computer programmers. And usually, sometimes those two are blurred together, sometimes they're not. So there are some people who create games, right? But to create games, you need very complex tools. There are people whose jobs are to create those tools that help people create games. And I guess with that in mind, that might help you get a more bigger picture of what game development is like. So here I'm going to mostly focus on the things that are programming related. Those are being the software developers, computer programmers, and I won't focus too much on audio engineers, but I guess they're all under a similar umbrella to some extent. So those are the technical jobs, I'll say, in the industry. Some other jobs include animation, game design, stuff like that, which are very fun to do. But I will not discuss a lot of the tools you'd use if you want to get into that part of the industry. So we'll get to practicals in a sec. But before we do, I'd like to give you guys some, I would say, inspiration, or more of a structured idea of what game development looks like beginning to end. So what's the life cycle of a game? As you can see, I mean, it depends. Are we talking about a self-taught, like, pet project that you started yourself and then you finished it yourself? Or something that you worked on with friends? Or is it a big company, right? I mean, you guys play a lot of games. You probably played games from Ubisoft or CD Projekt Red or Riot Games or whatever your favorite company is. But how do these companies do it? I just want to start at exploring how companies do it, because that will reflect a little bit on your journey as a game developer in a bit. So it starts with an idea, right? You have some people, they think of some idea. They're like, okay, wouldn't it be cool if I had a game where I can do this and this and that? Wouldn't it be cool if I had a game where I can explore in the world, or have a battle royale, or whatever it is, right? Then you get to design. This is where you'll get a lot of artists. People are very creative, very talented. They draw a lot of concept arts. I mean, you probably have seen a lot of these, like, pictures that they call concept art. That's usually in the design process of a game. And this is also when storytellers start to create stories for the game. They start to shape up the story in a sense. And then we get to, the technical work. This is the part that you might not be extremely familiar with. This is where you get a lot of software developers, people who make very complex pieces of code. They come together and they start building a lot of tools. They start to build the tools that I would say the game developers will use so they can actually start creating the game. Those are the people who create things like Blender or 3ds Max, if you've ever heard of them. Those are the people who create the CryEngine, if you've ever heard of that, or any famous game engine you might have heard of, or Unity even, or Unreal. And then we get to the programming part. This is the part that some of you guys are probably most excited about and would love to know how to get into, and I'll get to that. So how does this reflect on you? You know, an aspiring game developer who wants to put all of his heart into his games. Well, it turns out it's not that different. I mean, okay, it's slightly different. Okay, it depends, but we'll see. So I've prepared some case examples for you guys about what game development on a personal level looks like usually. So this is a small project, 3-week process, beginner level. I did this a while back. Again, it starts with an idea. You get an idea. I want to do this. I want to do that. You start drawing it out on paper. You say, okay, I'm gonna have a boss fight that does this and that, and I'm gonna have a boss mechanic that does this and that, and then I'm gonna have a crafting system that does this, and you draw out all of these things on paper, kind of like storyboarding. If any of you guys are into film or cinema, you kind of storyboard. I'll say quote unquote storyboard your game in a sense, where you start designing the.
Hello, Mohammed. Can you hear me? I think.
Yes, I can hear you. Hello?
Hello, yes. I think it's the internet is lagging from Mohammed's side. Yeah.
Is everything all right now?
Oh, wait.
Okay, you're back now.
Yeah,
you're back now, Mohammed.
Yeah, sorry. That was weird. All right, where was I? Right, so I was at this slide, right? So at this stage, you start drawing or creating or collecting your assets. Some people are really into art and into creating these drawings or models or 3D models or whatever. Some people love doing that themselves. Some people don't, and that's fine. That's when you start looking online for assets that you can use. Or some people pay for them. Some people find them for free online. You can figure it out usually. So this is just a small video of what it looked like at the end. I hope it loads. Give me 1 second. Oh, all right. It's giving me an error. That's fine. We'll skip that. But then I'll have another example. This is what the development of a university level game dev project looks like. This is a 3 weeks project from someone was very, I wouldn't say he's a beginner. He's an intermediate, very good programmer who's been doing this for a while, I'd say. You can check his page on GitHub. Amazing guy. Again, he starts with drawing out a storyboard of some sense, right? You have, this is what my game looks like. This is my title screen. I'm gonna have a level selection that looks like this. I'll have an instruction screen. I'll have some gameplay. I can pick up items like this. And he starts designing the mechanics on paper. This is very important. Then he starts designing assets. So this guy is very into drawing assets himself. So he designed his own assets. He designed his own guns. He drew them out using some software. And then he got the game. Boom, done. So isn't that so cool? Seeing the life cycle of your game from beginning to end. I think that's pretty cool myself. So, all right. I think it's time that we talk a bit practically. Where do I start? I think this is why most of you are here. I think it's very important to ask yourself to find your passion, right? What are you into? Are you into game design? Are you into audio and sound design? Or are you into audio programming? Are you into 3D graphics and creating big complex engines? Or do you love creating games using these frameworks? So this is a question that you'll have to answer for yourself, but don't be too afraid about the amount of options that are out there. The truth is, the best way to find your passion is to just start a project and do stuff, and you'll naturally find yourself gravitated towards some aspect of game development. Some people start a game and they're like, whoa, I really, really love designing the game. Sorry, I can see the chat. Some people are really into audio programming. Some people are into making 3D graphics. Some people are into making frameworks. So you really need to figure out what is it that you love the most. And in this presentation, I'll tell you guys about some of the stuff that are out there. So we'll start from the top. This is the thing that you guys are most familiar with, is how do I create games using powerful frameworks that other people have laid out. This is making game. This is, I guess, in a nutshell, making games in Unity or Unreal, or any other game engine like Godot or any engine that you probably heard of. Surprise, the best way to learn is just do. So here's the thing. A lot of people, when they start, there's a big problem with starting, that is, you always fret too much about, oh, what is the best way to do stuff? Or what is the best framework that I pick? Or because we always have this anxiety that, oh, if I pick the wrong framework, then I won't learn anything. Or, oh, what if I pick the wrong thing and then like I would have wasted my time. The truth is, we're all learning. There is, in game development, there is, for a large part, there is no wasting time. Whatever you decide on doing, whether it's, so some of you guys have learned GameMaker, right? Probably in the academy. GameMaker is an amazing engine, right? And it allows you to do a lot of stuff. Now, some person might say, oh, what's the point of learning GameMaker if I want to learn Unity in the future? The truth is, by learning GameMaker, you learn so many skills that are so easily transferable to all aspects of game development. When you learn Unity, you learn so much about graphics, about how to make 3D games. Those same skills are very transferable to Unreal, right? When you learn Unreal, you learn so much about the lower level graphics work that is needed, that is also transferable to Unity. And it goes like in so many directions. So don't be too nervous about starting or fretting too much about where to start or where you should start. I think the best way is just start. And it sounds cliche, but you really should say, okay, I kind of feel like I want to learn Unity, I'll learn Unity, you know? I feel like I want to learn some like graphics framework that I can work with, just learn that. Don't, like, the more you waste time thinking about, oh, did I pick the right thing to start with, you'll just be wasting time for a while. But then again, regardless, I think it helps to pick the right thing based on what you think is right for you. So at the beginning, it'll be slow, right? Like, I admit it. Sometimes you'll feel like things are a bit dull because you'll be trying out this new engine, right? You'll be trying out Unity or something. And then you watch a tutorial and then you follow it for a while. Then you get stuck and you're like, whoa, I can't do this. And then you may be stuck on a problem for days, right? You may be stuck on it for hours at the beginning, then you'll be stuck for days. And it's fine. That's how it always is. The problem is a lot of people, when they get stuck for several hours or for a couple of days, they just give up. They're like, maybe, so I tried to learn Unreal or Unity or some engine, and then I got stuck for like 2 days. I think this is not the engine for me, so I should just stop. I think that is a very unproductive way to go about things, because you'll always be stuck at some point. But what you'll want to do is to always push through it. Whenever you get stuck, you just push through it. You try to get help. You try to seek help from forums, from YouTube, from Google. Google is your friend, by the way. I'll get to that soon. So I promise that I'll get to a bit more practical stuff. Those are some channels that I would recommend for Unity. There's a guy called Sebastian Lag on YouTube. He has this channel called Coding Adventures. He basically he breaks the extent of what you think is possible with Unity. Takes Unity as a framework, and he does the craziest ideas with it. He says, okay, I want to make a solar system in Unity, or a game where you can explore the solar system. And it just does it from scratch. I think that's very, very inspiring. Give me a second to look at the chat. I'm very happy that a lot of people in the chat love this guy. Yeah, I love this guy. He's amazing. I recommend everyone who hasn't watched his videos to watch them. I think they're so inspiring, and you can learn so much from his videos, and about just how much you can do with just very simple frameworks that you learn for a while. One sec. Okay, so this is probably the most important slide of the talk. Google and YouTube are your friends. Whenever you're stuck, just Google. And this is something that might shock you a bit, but written sources in general in software development are quote unquote more fundamental than YouTube videos. The problem is a lot of people, when they want to do something, they try to YouTube it. And nowadays, there are so many amazing resources on YouTube, like this guy I just mentioned, Sebastian Lag. And that's really cool. But sometimes you might not find everything on YouTube. And sometimes you might find stuff on YouTube that is not the optimal, I guess, guides. So it helps to just Google. Look for people who have written guides that are extremely good and very easy to follow. You'll find a lot of those online if you look. But I think, again, a very important thing to take away here is, I'll repeat it, Google and YouTube are your friends. Whenever you're stuck, anything, just Google, YouTube. There is no magical source of information that like everyone learns game development from, right? Like, it's not like, oh, you got stuck on a problem. Oh, if only I know that like special course somewhere that tells you how to solve this. No, that doesn't happen. If you're stuck on a problem, you just Google it, and then, until you can fix it. Because when you think about it, there are so many aspiring game developers, and usually there are very big communities that try to help each other. And usually you'll find solutions for most of your problems, basically. So now, this is a comprehensive source on Unity development, if you guys are interested. By the way, if you guys want, I can share the slides with you later, because I have a lot of resources here that you guys might like. This is just a written guide on Unity that's very comprehensive. This goes from A to Z. No prior experience. I think it's very nice. I looked at it for a while. I think it's really good. This guy also has a really amazing YouTube series on Unity. I would advise him. Brackies, yes. I think a lot of you guys are very familiar with those guys. But yeah, I think this guy is really good. Watch his videos. By the way, there's a trend that you'll see in the slide is most of it is me telling you, oh, go watch this or go do this. Is that the truth of the matter is the best way to, there is no place that you'll go to that will teach you everything. You'll have to go and seek this knowledge for yourself. Those tutorials, those guides, those written sources, those are the best way to learn. And I think it helps a lot to look at these things. This guy also amazing resource, Sam Hogan, if you guys are familiar with. Him and Hobson make amazing videos on, amazing. They make a lot of amazing videos on either OpenGL or Unity. I'll get to OpenGL in a second. But yeah. Infinite procedural terrain. This slide, I put it here to make you guys realize that Unity can do a whole bunch of stuff. It's not just for, oh, I'll make this basic game that does this and that. You can do a whole bunch of crazy stuff with Unity. Infinite procedural terrain is one of them. Some of the very, very technical stuff, you can do that. Unity is very powerful. So now, after all of this, right? Maybe after development for a while with Unity, you might feel one of two things. Either I want to understand what I'm doing more, right? Because Unity abstracts so much stuff from you, because it takes care of graphics, takes care of audio, it takes care of so many things that you might feel like, you might feel that curiosity that, oh, what is happening behind the scenes, right? Like you want to understand more. Or you are saying, okay, you know what? Like I just don't want to use tools that are provided to me because I don't feel like I understand them well. And I want to be able to be so familiar with tools that I can feel like I could write them myself, if that makes sense. Maybe you say, you know what? I want to write Minecraft from scratch. Maybe this is something that you really want to do. Like you want to have that satisfaction of writing code from scratch that creates a game, beginning to end, where you have basically full control over everything that goes on in your game from beginning to end. What should you do in this case? This is the point where I would suggest start looking at graphics frameworks. That are all code. We don't look at editors anymore. There's no drag and drop. We're looking at code full on. So this is the type of things that, so some of you might ask, oh, like, well, what's the point if I can just use Unity or Unreal? So these are the things that will make you a very, very, very valuable programmer in the future. Because a lot of these things like Unity and Unreal, they are built on top of these giant frameworks, right? When you learn those, you will have understood so much of what goes on behind the scenes of your code that even if you want to go back to a higher level and say use Unity or Unreal, you would be understanding them so much more because you know how they were built. And that is so valuable in game development and computer science in general. So what are graphics frameworks and how many are there? The three big ones are, you might or might not be familiar with them. They are OpenGL, Vulkan, and DirectX 11. I'll go over. Oh, so I have a question in the chat. Which one do you prefer, Unity or Unreal? So this is a very tricky question. So I'll give you a bit of insight over what's the whole deal between Unity versus Unreal. In general, the purpose of Unreal, so Unreal is a professional game development engine. It gives you so many powerful tools, and it's better built like right out of the box. It has a lot of pros and cons. I would say, okay, I'll start with Unity first. The very nice thing about Unity is that it has a gigantic community. There are so many people who are learning Unity. Okay, I'll get to that in a second, Yazid. So what is really nice about Unity is that it has such a big community of people working on it or like working with it that you'll find so much help for whatever you want to do. You'll find so many resources. Whenever you're stuck on a problem, you Google it, it's probably there, right? You want a guide for how to build something, you Google it, it's probably there. You YouTube it, it's probably there. With Unreal, there are a lot of resources on it, but its community is mostly very professional game developers who usually don't have a lot of time to make a community and help each other. I guess one other thing about Unity versus Unreal is that Unity is written in when you program in Unity, you program in C#. When you use Unreal, you use C++. C# in general is a much more forgiving language than C++. Even though, and this is both a blessing and a curse, because C++ is much more advanced, But if you learn it, it's so fundamental that it will help you in so many facets. Like even if you decide to not do game development in the future, even when you get into college, if you go into computer science, if you have learned C++ so well, like you'll have known so many things, they'll just make your life much easier in general. C# is nice, but it's much more forgiving. So yeah, I think that was a very long-winded answer. Yeah, I think as a beginner, I think Unity is a better choice, but that's just my opinion. For me personally, I like Unity more. But actually, one thing, I don't deal a lot with editors like Unity and Unreal. Most of my work is either in engines like OpenGL and Vulkan or DirectX, and I'll get to those in a second. So Abdurrahman Darwish is asking, isn't Unity written in C++? Yes, so okay, I'm not sure, but it could be written in C++, but that doesn't mean, what I'm talking about is when you use Unity, you usually use C#. C# is the programming language you use to program in Unity. A lot of things can be written in any language, really. So I'll get to the three big ones for graphics frameworks. By the way, Yazid, you asked about what is Unity's graphics framework. I'm actually not sure. It could be, that's a good question. I'm actually not sure. It could be their own graphics framework, but I'm not entirely sure. Usually when people make big software, when they make their own engine as big companies, it's usually their own graphics framework. But yeah. So that's an interesting question. I'll have to Google it later. So this is very important advice. Pick a framework, roll with it. If you're interested in, yeah, Google it, exactly. So pick a framework and roll with it. You should really learn it well, learn the theory, learn the practice, learn both the code and the math behind it. There are a lot of amazing sources for DirectX and OpenGL and Vulkan. I would say with so a lot of people ask about Vulkan versus OpenGL. It's very similar to the Unity versus Unreal debate. I think OpenGL is a bit more, I guess, beginner oriented, but both are extremely powerful and both are extremely useful. DirectX is also nice. So those are some sources that I have left in the slides for if you guys want to learn Vulkan or OpenGL. This is a guy on YouTube. So this is just a slide to show you how powerful these graphics frameworks are. When you think about it, this is a game that has been made from scratch. Like, there's no editor that did anything for you. You built this, like some guy built this game in code from scratch using these frameworks. I think that's kind of awesome. This series actually walks you through this, like step by step. I think it's very useful if you want to learn how these engines work and learn them more. I think this was done in OpenGL, if I remember correctly. So yeah, I'd advise, if you want to learn more about this stuff, you should watch these videos. So learning these things will make you better at programming languages like C, C#, C++. That is very awesome, because this is something that a lot of people might not tell you, but when you learn these programming languages so early, if you want to do computer science in the future, you'll come to college and you'll be like, oh man, I've done all of this for quite a long while. It makes your life so much easier, and it makes everything so much more fun because you understand things at a much deeper level. I think this is a common pattern with game development in general. The more you understand, the more you have fun. Which is why this is actually a tangent. I'll go on a tangent and say, when you guys are learning stuff from videos or written sources and stuff, try to focus more about learning rather than focusing on the goal, because a lot of people get lost on, oh, I really want to make this game that this guy did in a tutorial. So they just keep like going video by video and they just copy paste whatever they see on the screen. They just keep doing it and they're like, oh, I have a game now. But then you ask yourself, like, how much did I actually learn, right? I think that's very important to keep in mind. Whenever you watch a tutorial on something, I think the best way to go about tutorials is try to watch them do stuff. Try to see if you understand it. Try to see if you pause the guide and you put it aside for a minute, can you do the same thing? Do you understand it well enough to be doing the same thing without just taking it right there? I think that's a very good test of knowledge, and it helps you a lot in making sure you understand things well enough that you can just produce them out of thin air. Because always, so at the beginning, your goal is always to understand. You just want to understand and learn. And then after you understand so much, you'll get to the point where you'll be writing games on the fly. You'll be like, you don't have to watch a guide every 10 minutes to say, oh, how do I do this? How do I do that? You'll have understood things so well that you can just do them on command. So this is a part of, okay, so after this, I'll get to another. So far, we've looked at 2 levels of game development, right? We looked at the very high level, which is using frameworks like Unity and Unreal. And then we dived a little bit deeper into, oh, what if I want to go a bit deeper into graphics frameworks like Vulkan or OpenGL or whatever? There is one step forward you can take. If you're not into 3D graphics and computer graphics in general, I would say don't focus too much on these slides. But I thought these slides were very important because it's something that a lot of people miss out on when it's so fundamental. And it's such a nice field that in game development that a lot of people don't pay a lot of attention to or are not aware that it exists. So I just wanted to give you guys a little bit more of insight into that. So computer graphics. So at the heart of game development comes computer graphics, in my opinion. I'll give you this, right? Now so it depends on whether you find this question interesting or not. Will you know, oh, would I love this kind of things or not? Have you ever, I'll give you this question. Have you ever thought, how is it possible that my 2D screen, right? You have a 2D screen that is a bunch of discrete pixels. How can it show me a virtual 3-dimensional world? Like, isn't that kind of a profound idea when you think about it? Like when you're playing a game, right? Like say you're playing Battlefield or Call of Duty or Dark Souls or whatever. Or actually, let's stick with a first-person game, right? You're looking through the eyes of your character into a world that's completely 3D. And it's being projected into your 2D screen that's just a bunch of pixels. Isn't that kind of crazy? If you want to learn more about how these stuff are done, how cameras, quote unquote, are made in video games, how those frameworks give you these abilities to have cameras that are either third person or first person, and how does that all work, you might enjoy the computer graphics aspect of game development. So I don't know how many of you guys have taken matrices and linear algebra in school from the math side. If any of those words don't make sense, it's fine. They're not important to the slides. I'm just, so all of this happens because of linear algebra and matrices. And the point of this slides, even if you guys don't know what these are yet, is that math is very important, okay? So math is kind of the language that we use to describe so many things. And almost everything in game development is only possible because of math. And math is so fundamental to a lot of the things that we do. And when you understand it so well and you understand the intuition behind it, and like it comes to the point where this kind of math is common sense to you, you will feel like you understood all the secrets of the universe. I think I'm exaggerating, but when you start working on those frameworks and you're aware of the math behind it, or how the things are being projected and how the things are being transferred from one space to another, a lot of fancy talk, but when you start understanding these things, you'll feel like your game development journey will have taken on a whole new level. So if any of you guys have taken matrices, everything is a matrix. Even if you guys haven't taken these stuff, I really hope that when you guys learn more about matrices and vectors, either in high school or in university, you realize that a lot of these things are only possible because of this math. When you think about it, in a game, when you have a first-person camera, that camera is literally a matrix of numbers. And I think that is really cool. If you're really into these kind into this kind of math, which is extremely fun and all about visuals and imagination. I mean, you can write code that think about this. You can write code, a series of instructions that transforms a bunch of numbers that are but a bunch of coordinates to the scout object right here. That's kind of crazy, I think. This is something that I've been working on over the summer, is a game or a computer graphics engine that basically that has zero abstraction from scratch, gives you objects on the screen and gives you the illusion of seeing them based on numbers and coordinates. I think that is very cool. And I think it's an aspect of game development that is usually brushed over upon. People don't pay a lot of attention to it. I think it's really cool. If you want to learn more about this, I think Scratch a Pixel is a very good resource. I would say, as a disclaimer, these things are not extremely practical because you might not write a lot of these things because they have been written for you. But when you write them yourself, it teaches you so much, and it makes things like starting OpenGL and Vulkan much easier because you digest more of the concepts. All right, so this is the stuff that I have just prepared for you guys. I guess I'll just spend the last 5 minutes or 10 minutes just talking about, I guess now that we have finished the high level, the mid level, and the low level, we'll jump back to the higher level side of stuff with Unity and Unreal. I'm curious, are there any specific questions you have, guys, about starting out in learning things like Unity or Unreal? If you guys want to ask in the chat. But until you guys ask, I think, again, if there is one thing you should take away from this talk is the more you start early, the crazier things you'll be able to do. And you should never be afraid to be stuck. Whenever you get stuck at a problem, that is completely normal. We've all been there. So, like some of us have been stuck on problems in games while learning frameworks that we've been stuck on for like 3 days, 4 days, sometimes a week. Sometimes you just push through it, and you're like, you come out the other side, someone who understands so much more. So I don't know if this got too philosophical, but I think it's very important to just push through and keep in mind your goal. Always I think it's very important to have a lot of inspiration. Because when you work on a lot of stuff, you should always keep in mind, I'm only trying to learn. And the goal is that I'll learn so much to the point where I can make kick-ass games that are amazing, that even I enjoy playing them. Okay, so I got 2 questions in the chat. So Barbara is asking, is Pygame an engine? Also, any tips on reading documentation? Pygame is a game engine. It's a 2D game engine, actually. It's not extremely complicated, like in the way it was built. The problem with it is it's not too powerful. It allows you to, it's really nice for writing 2D games. Actually, wait, I'll go back a couple of slides. Wait, give me 1 sec. So this was actually, so this game, which I wish it loaded, but it does not for some reason. Oh, it actually loaded, nice. So this game I actually made in Pygame in like 2 weeks. Pygame is a really nice, I think, engine, but its power doesn't extend like much further than 2D games, unfortunately. This game actually was done in an OpenGL interface to Python, which I think is cool. So, okay, tips on reading documentation. The more you read it, the better you get. I think reading documentation is so much more important than following guides. Always try to find the official documentation. I think the more you read documentation, it's just you naturally get better at it. Try to learn how to target the stuff that you need from documentation, because a lot of the stuff it has, like whenever you find documentation on a function, you find a lot of stuff about the function that you're not interested in. Try to figure out, okay, what is the use case? How do I use this? Or like, how do I take this function and do something with it? So Abdurrahman's asking, do you think people should start with C# or Unreal Engines for blueprint system? Honestly, this is just my opinion, but I really don't like blueprint systems in general. Like any kind of drag and drop, like blueprint system, they can be good for learning at the beginning. But again, this is just my opinion. But I prefer starting with an actual language like C#, actually pushing through it. It has a much steeper learning curve at the beginning, but if you push through it, it's much better for you in the long term, I think. Yazid's saying it's super weak though. Yeah, I agree. Piglet is based on OpenGL. That's nice. By the way, if you want to do OpenGL in Python, there is actually there is an OpenGL interface that you can use. But I think you'll have to do a lot of the linear algebra stuff yourself. It gives you some functionalities, but there's a lot of things that you'll have to implement yourself. So you'll have to really know the deal with dot products and vectors, all stuff like that. Evil is saying I spent half of my time reading documentation. Yeah, true. A lot of okay, there's not game development, but a lot of software engineering in general is mostly about reading documentation. I think learning how to read documentation well is such an important skill, because when you learn how to read it so well, you can do anything, right? It becomes a question of what do I want to do? How do I want to do it? Oh, let me look up the function that does the thing that I want to do. How do I use this according to documentation? Good, boom, problem solved. So yeah. Again, I think I didn't answer the question about getting better reading documentation well. I think just do it more. The more you read documentation, the better. Yeah. Any other questions about Unreal, Unity, OpenGL, or Vulkan, if there's any love for that? By the way, don't sleep on DirectX. It's a very good engine. I also wanted to give, there's something that I forgot to mention, which is a nice thing about learning how computer graphics works in general, is that you'll be able to understand a lot of the things that you see in everyday life when you play games. Like you'll be able to understand what anti-aliasing actually is, right? Like when you turn on the settings and you see, you have anti-aliasing times 16 or anti-aliasing times 4. If you get into like low-level computer graphics work, you'll be actually implementing a lot of that stuff. You'll be implementing anti-aliasing functionality, or stuff like what's it called? When you hear a lot of people saying ray tracing, or this is the newest ray tracer GPU or whatever, or NVIDIA ray RTX, whatever, you'll be able to understand what is ray tracing. Those are things that are very important, I think. And the more you learn them, so in general, the more you learn stuff at a deeper level or on a lower level, the better you understand things at the higher level. And I think it all comes down to what level do you feel most comfortable with and you want to continue on. So I would say the best way is to always start with the highest level, which is either GameMaker. So like say you started with GameMaker, then you can move on to say Unity. And then after you've been done with Unity for a while, maybe for some people, you'll find that you really love Unity. Like that's just all that you want to do. And you just want to make games in Unity. So then you try to look at how to do more advanced stuff in Unity. Then some people would say, okay, I want to go down a level. That's when you do OpenGL and Vulkan. Some people want to go down one more level. That's when you like write code that directly interfaces with the hardware, maybe in DirectX or something. When I take it down a notch, you do the stuff that I told you about, working with computer graphics. But yeah, like I think in general, that's like a big high-level overview of what game development is like and all the levels to it. I think those are like the major 3 levels that are the high level, Unity, Unreal, then the mid-level, I guess, Vulkan, OpenGL, and the lowest level, which is building your own graphics engines. I hope this like big picture view gives you some idea about what are the things you should expect and where to start. I've blabbered for a while, but I think one thing I want to reiterate on is, again, don't fret too much about where to start and what to start with. just do it. There is no time that goes to waste. You'll do something for maybe a couple of weeks. You feel like you understand it well. And then, you learn. Maybe you feel like you don't like this framework, move on to another framework. At the end of the day, you're always learning. I think one advice also I wanted to give is when you try out those frameworks, say like anything from any level, say like even if you're learning something in Unity, or even if you're doing something in GameMaker or Godot or Piglet or whatever, when you do these things, don't start too big, right? When you make a game, don't say, okay, I'm gonna make this online MMO that has like this big crafting system and has like this crazy like 5,000 player servers, and I'm gonna do this and that. Start small, start very small. Always say, I mean, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the idea, but usually in programming, each programming language has a hello world, which is like, what's the smallest program that you can write that actually compiles and does stuff, or usually prints hello world. In game development, there's a similar idea that there are hello worlds. When you think about it, a hello world in Unity is just trying to get a window to actually start and do something. Maybe have like a single object, like a small cube in the middle, right? Start things like a cube to fall, exactly. Like start very small. Say, maybe you would say, okay, maybe when you're learning some of the deeper stuff, even when you're doing OpenGL or Vulkan, say, okay, you know what? I'm gonna start with the simplest thing I can do. I'll do a 2D game, right? Then you do a 2D game and it's really nice. Then you say, okay, I'll step it up a notch. Maybe now I'll make it a 2D online game. Or maybe you don't want to make it an online game. Maybe you'll say, okay, now I'll make maybe a more complex, bigger 2D game. And then you say, okay, now I'll move up to 3D. Then when you move up to 3D, maybe you should make a very, very basic 3D game. That's just a cube moving around. Or like a cube that can move around, like jump slightly, right? And then you say, okay, how do I make this more complex? Don't ever be afraid of scratching everything down and starting over. The more you start over, the better you get. And you really should start to break this anxiety of, oh man, I don't want to start over, because starting over is always so, there's always that mental block that, oh, I already have this code that I have, I don't want to start over again. You should learn to always build on top of the stuff that you do. If I want to make a multiplayer game, what are some of the keywords you should look for? Networking, sockets, how to make an online game, how to make an online game in Unity. Google is very simple. It has a lot of resources. You'll find a lot of resources and a lot of stuff. Depends on what level of game development you're doing. If you're doing Unity, I'm not sure. I can't remember, but I think Unity probably has some built-in support for online. If you're doing stuff on the level of OpenGL or Vulkan, you'll probably need to do some of the networking yourself. You'll have to learn how sockets work and how to send packets and everything. So yeah, in general,
in the coming workshop, we will talk about multiplayer. We'll focus though on coach multiplayer, which does not necessarily involve online, but we will talk about why online is usually more hard or more problematic from the easier type of multiplayer, like when all the players are using the same screen or the same console. So be there. We'll have that workshop on not the coming Saturday, the one after, which is on the 31st.